My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Global Solutions in downtown Seattle. The kind of person who triple-checks spreadsheets, maintains immaculate records, and actually enjoys reconciling complex accounts. The kind of person who stays late not for recognition, but because numbers tell stories that need to be heard. That Wednesday morning started like any other. Seattle rain drumming against the office windows, the gentle hum of computers, and the familiar scent of coffee from the break room. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports when Marcus Walsh, my direct supervisor, appeared at my desk. His usual swagger was missing, replaced by something tighter, more desperate. Sarah, my office. Now. I followed him, laptop in hand, already sensing something was wrong. Marcus's office had the best view in our department, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. But today, the blinds were drawn, casting the room in artificial shadows. "Close the door," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. I did, then took a seat across from his mahogany desk. The leather chair felt unusually cold. "We have a situation," Marcus began, his voice unnaturally calm. "The Anderson account audit revealed some discrepancies. The Anderson account, our biggest client, worth over $50 million in annual revenue. I had flagged some concerns about their numbers months ago, but Marcus had dismissed them." "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. Marcus finally looked at me, his gray eyes hard as stone. $3 million worth. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $3 million. In the corporate world, that wasn't just a discrepancy. That was a career-ending catastrophe. "How?" I managed to ask. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Funny you should ask. According to the timestamps on the transaction records, the errors occurred during your weekly review periods." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what he was doing. "That's impossible," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I maintain detailed logs of every review. There's no way I would have missed. The records show otherwise," he cut in smoothly. "And as your supervisor, I'm offering you a choice. Take responsibility for the oversight, accept a demotion with a minor pay cut, and we all move on. Or," he spread his hands wide, "well, falsifying financial records is grounds for immediate termination. Your choice." I sat there, heart pounding but mind surprisingly clear. This was why he'd been so quick to dismiss my concerns about the Anderson account. He'd been covering his tracks, laying groundwork, probably altering timestamps on documents. But he'd made one critical mistake. "You're right about one thing," I said, standing slowly. "The records do tell the truth. All of them, including the encrypted backup logs I maintain on our secure server. The ones that show exactly who accessed those files and when. The ones that prove every alteration you made to cover up your mistakes." The color drained from Marcus's face. "You're bluffing." I smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you've already won. "Check the backups, Marcus. I'll wait." His fingers flew across his keyboard, navigating through folders, his face growing paler by the second. I watched as he found them. Dozens of automated logs, each one meticulously documenting every change he'd made to the original files. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, his confidence evaporating. "We can work something out." "You're right again," I replied, gathering my laptop. "We can. I have a meeting with Linda Carter in internal audit in—" I glanced at my watch. 20 minutes. I'm sure she'll be very interested in working this out. "Sarah, wait," Marcus called as I reached the door. Think about what you're doing. I can make your life very difficult. I turned back, meeting his desperate gaze. No, Marcus. You already tried that. Now, I'm going to make your life very honest. The walk to Linda Carter's office on the executive floor felt like floating. My hands didn't shake as I knocked on her door. My voice didn't waver as I laid out the evidence. The backup logs, the original timestamps, the trail of Marcus's alterations, the attempts to frame me. Linda, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd earned her reputation as the company's ethical backbone, listened without interruption. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You understand the gravity of these accusations? She asked finally. Yes, I replied. That's why I brought proof. She nodded, then reached for her phone. Clear my afternoon, she told her assistant, and get me Gerald Thompson from legal. We're going to need him. What followed was 5 hours of intense scrutiny, every log examined, every timestamp verified, every alteration traced back to its source. By the time I left the office that evening, the Seattle rain had stopped, and the truth had been uncovered. Marcus was placed on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation. I was temporarily assigned to oversee his duties, but I knew this was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The next morning, walking into the office felt different. Colleagues who normally barely nodded hello now stopped to chat. My inbox was flooded with meeting requests from directors and vice presidents. Everyone wanted to touch base about the Anderson account. I handled each inquiry professionally, neither gloating nor gossiping. The numbers told their own story. I didn't need to embellish them. A week into the investigation, Linda Carter called me back to her office. This time, she wasn't alone. Gerald Thompson from legal and James Morrison, our CFO, sat with her. Sarah, James began, his tone serious but not unkind. We've completed our initial review. The evidence is conclusive. I nodded, waiting. Marcus Walsh's employment has been terminated, Linda continued. The board is considering legal action regarding the attempted fraud. But that's not why we called you here, Gerald added. We need to discuss your future with Meridian Global. My heart skipped. Despite everything, despite the proof and the vindication, there was still a small part of me that feared corporate politics would somehow twist this against me. James leaned forward, a slight smile breaking through his professional demeanor. We're creating a new position. Director of Financial Integrity and Compliance. Full oversight of all major accounts, direct reporting to me, and a seat on the executive committee. I felt my eyes widen. And you're telling me this because we'd like to offer you the position, Linda finished. Your handling of this situation demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and integrity we need. I sat there, letting the words sink in. Director, Executive Committee. The very position Marcus had always claimed I was too inexperienced to handle. Of course, James added, this would mean taking over Marcus's former office. I hope that won't be a problem. I thought about that office with its view of Elliott Bay, about the blinds Marcus always kept drawn, about the shadows he tried to hide in. No problem at all, I replied. I think that office could use some sunlight. The paperwork was signed by the end of the day. My new role would be announced company-wide on Monday. But as I packed up my old desk that Friday evening, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Marcus had tried to force me to take a fall, never realizing he was actually giving me a boost. Someone had already cleared Marcus's office when I arrived Monday morning. The blinds were open, revealing a stunning view of the bay glittering under the rare Seattle sun. As I set down my box of belongings, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Nobody likes a whistleblower." Marcus. I saved the number but didn't respond. He didn't realize that this story was far from over. He thought he'd lost his job and his reputation. He had no idea what was coming next. I sat down at my new desk, opened my laptop, and began a fresh audit of every account Marcus had ever touched. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in all this, it was that numbers don't lie. People do. And I was just getting started. I spent my first week as director methodically reviewing every account Marcus had touched during his tenure at Meridian Global. The Anderson account discrepancy hadn't felt like an isolated incident, and my instincts were screaming that there was more to uncover. Late Thursday night, as most of the office had cleared out, I found what I was looking for. Buried in the Richardson Technologies audit from 2 years ago, subtle manipulations, carefully hidden transfers, numbers that didn't quite add up. Then the Blackwood Capital reports showed similar patterns. The Martinez Group too, each instance too small to raise immediate alarms, but together they painted a disturbing picture. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. "Hope you're enjoying my office. Don't get too comfortable. Everyone has secrets." I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Linda in internal audit and Gerald in legal, then returned to my investigation. If Marcus thought he could intimidate me, he clearly hadn't learned anything from our last encounter. By Monday morning, I had compiled enough evidence to fill a banker's box. Not just accounting discrepancies, but a pattern of systematic fraud spanning nearly 4 years. The total amount made the Anderson account look like pocket change. I was preparing my report when Jessica from HR appeared at my door, looking uncomfortable. "Sarah, we've received some concerning allegations." I set down my pen. "From Marcus?" She nodded, sliding a folder across my desk. "He's claiming you accessed his personal files without authorization. Says you used them to frame him and steal his position." I opened the folder, scanning the accusations. Each one more outrageous than the last. I had hacked his computer, planted false evidence, conspired with others to orchestrate his downfall. The desperation in every line was almost pathetic. "Interesting timing," I said, pulling up my secure server access logs. "Would you like to see exactly when and how I accessed every file used in the investigation? All through proper channels, all properly documented." Jessica's relief was visible. "That would be helpful. And while we're at it," I added, "I have something else you should see." I shared my latest findings: the years of fraud, the multiple accounts, the careful cover-ups. Jessica's eyes widened as she went through the evidence. "This is extensive," she managed finally. "Yes," I agreed. "And there's more. Marcus has been sending me threatening messages." I showed her the texts. "I've already forwarded them to legal, but you should probably have copies for his file." She nodded, her HR professionalism warring with obvious shock. "I'll need to escalate this immediately." "Of course," I said. "I'm heading to a meeting with James and Linda about these findings anyway. You're welcome to join us." The meeting that followed lasted 3 hours. James Morrison, our CFO, sat at the head of the conference table, his face growing grimmer with each page we reviewed. $7.8 million, he said finally. Total fraudulent manipulations across 4 years and 6 major accounts. "That we've found so far," I added. "I'm still reviewing the smaller accounts." Linda Carter shook her head. "The SEC will need to be notified." already prepared that report," I said, sliding another folder forward, along with a detailed timeline of discovery and all supporting documentation. James looked at me with newfound respect. "You've been thorough." "Numbers don't lie," I replied. "People do. I just let the numbers tell their story." Gerald Thompson, who had been quietly taking notes, finally spoke up. "Marcus's allegations against you were a mistake. They opened the door for a deeper investigation that might have taken months to initiate otherwise." "He's panicking," Linda observed, "making amateur mistakes." "Speaking of mistakes," I said, pulling up my email, "you should see what just arrived." It was an email from Marcus, sent to the entire executive team, attempting to expose what he called a conspiracy against him. Attached were documents he claimed proved his innocence, except they were the very files that showed his alterations most clearly. "He just authenticated the evidence himself," Gerald said, almost admiringly. "By sending these files from his personal email, he's confirmed they're genuine." James stood up, straightening his tie. "Sarah, work with legal to prepare a full disclosure for the board. Linda, coordinate with our external auditors. We need to get ahead of this." As everyone filed out, Linda lingered behind. "You know," she said quietly, "when you first came to me about the Anderson account, I thought you were either very brave or very naive. Now I realize you were something else entirely." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "Prepared," she smiled. "You didn't just catch him. You built an airtight case that even his desperate flailing can't damage." The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, audits, and legal consultations. Marcus's attempts at retaliation had backfired spectacularly, drawing attention to aspects of his fraud that might have taken months to uncover otherwise. Then came Wednesday morning. I arrived at my office to find James waiting for me. "The FBI is involved now," he said without preamble. "Marcus was arrested an hour ago. Apparently, this wasn't his first corporate fraud scheme." I sat down, letting that sink in. "Other companies?" James nodded. "2 previous employers. He'd been careful, changed his methods each time. But your investigation gave them the pattern they needed." My computer pinged with a news alert. The story had broken. Meridian Global executive arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I scanned the article, noting how it praised the company's internal controls and swift action once the fraud was discovered. "The board is pleased with how we handled this," James continued. "Particularly your role. They approved a new compliance initiative. Full department, expanded authority, increased budget." "Sounds like a lot of work," I observed. "It is," he agreed. "That's why they're promoting you again. Executive Vice President of Compliance and Risk Management. Interested?" I looked around my office, the one I'd only occupied for a few weeks, the one Marcus had tried to use to threaten me. It already felt small. "When do I start?" The following Monday, I walked into my new executive suite on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seattle, the bay sparkling under morning sun. But it wasn't the view that made me smile. It was the email from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit requesting a meeting to discuss their ongoing investigation into corporate fraud. Attached was a familiar name. Marcus's previous supervisor from his last job, the one who had given him a neutral reference despite suspicions of misconduct, the one who had helped him move on to Meridian Global, where he could continue his schemes. I opened my investigation files and began a new folder, because some stories don't end with one person's downfall. Sometimes they lead to deeper truths that need to be uncovered. Marcus thought he could threaten me with secrets, never realizing that secrets were exactly what I was best at exposing. My phone buzzed one last time. A final text from Marcus, probably sent just before his arrest. "You have no idea what you've started." I smiled, saving the message with all the others. Evidence was evidence, after all. "Actually," I said to my empty office, "I know exactly what I've started." 3 months later, I sat in my executive suite, reviewing the final report on Marcus's case. His guilty plea had opened up investigations at 5 other companies. 32 million in total fraud exposed, 18 conspirators charged, a web of corporate corruption unraveled because one person refused to take the fall. The view from my office now stretched beyond Seattle's skyline. I could see all the way to the mountains, clear and sharp against the horizon. But more importantly, I could see the future. One where numbers told their true stories, where integrity wasn't just a corporate buzzword, and where taking a stand didn't mean taking a fall. Linda stopped by that afternoon, a knowing smile on her face. "The board wants you to speak at the annual leadership conference," she said. "Share your insights on building a culture of transparency." "Interesting," I replied. "Any particular focus they want me to address?" "Just one," she grinned. "How to tell when someone's offering you a fall you should refuse." I thought about that moment in Marcus's office, when he tried to make me choose between my integrity and my career. He never understood that by refusing to fall, I'd actually learned to fly. "I think I can handle that," I said, turning to my computer to begin outlining my speech. Because some stories need to be told, not just for justice, but for change. The Seattle rain had returned, drumming against my office windows. But this time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like applause. "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Global Solutions in downtown Seattle. The kind of person who triple-checks spreadsheets, maintains immaculate records, and actually enjoys reconciling complex accounts. The kind of person who stays late not for recognition, but because numbers tell stories that need to be heard." That Wednesday morning started like any other. Seattle rain drumming against the office windows, the gentle hum of computers, and the familiar scent of coffee from the break room. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports when Marcus Walsh, my direct supervisor, appeared at my desk. His usual swagger was missing, replaced by something tighter, more desperate. "Sarah," my office. Now, I followed him, laptop in hand, already sensing something was wrong. Marcus's office had the best view in our department, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. But today, the blinds were drawn, casting the room in artificial shadows. "Close the door," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. I did, then took a seat across from his mahogany desk. The leather chair felt unusually cold. "We have a situation," Marcus began, his voice unnaturally calm. "The Anderson account audit revealed some discrepancies. The Anderson account, our biggest client, worth over $50 million in annual revenue. I had flagged some concerns about their numbers months ago, but Marcus had dismissed them." "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. Marcus finally looked at me, his gray eyes hard as stone. $3 million worth. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $3 million. In the corporate world, that wasn't just a discrepancy. That was a career-ending catastrophe. "How?" I managed to ask. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Funny you should ask. According to the timestamps on the transaction records, the errors occurred during your weekly review periods. My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what he was doing. That's impossible, I said. This has to be a joke, Michael Harrison said, tossing my carefully prepared proposal onto his mahogany desk. You want us to completely rebuild our software platform? Based on some wild theory about cloud integration. I stood in his corner office at Vertex Solutions, trying to keep my composure as 6 months of research and development was dismissed in seconds. The Seattle rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows, matching my sinking mood. It's not a theory, Michael, I explained, pulling up market research on my tablet. Every analysis shows enterprise software is moving to the cloud. If we don't adapt. Listen, Alex, he cut me off, leaning back in his leather chair. You're a good developer, but you don't understand business. Vertex has been providing on-premise solutions for 20 years. Our clients trust us because we're stable, reliable, traditional. My name is Alex Foster, and at that moment, I was watching my boss make the biggest mistake of his career, though neither of us knew it yet. Our biggest clients are already asking about cloud options, I persisted. IBM, Microsoft, even Oracle are all moving in this direction. We need TOE. What we need, Michael interrupted again, is for you to focus on maintaining our existing systems, not chasing trendy buzzwords. He stood up, signaling the conversation was over. As I reached for my proposal, he grabbed it first, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it in his Trome wastebasket. This meeting never happened, he said. Get back to work on the Henderson account updates. That's what pays your salary. I left his office feeling numb. 3 years at Vertex, countless late nights and weekends spent coding. And this was what I had to show for it. My innovation literally in the trash. Back at my desk, I opened my development environment and stared at the code I'd been working on. Not the mundane updates Michael wanted, but my own version of what Vertex's software could become. I'd built a prototype in my spare time, proving that cloud migration wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. How'd it go? I looked up to see Samantha Wright, our lead QA engineer, perched on the edge of my desk. She was one of the few people I trusted with my ideas about modernizing our platform. About as well as you predicted, I sighed. Michael thinks cloud computing is a trend. Sam shook her head. He's going to run this company into the ground. You know the Martinez account is already talking to Cloud Tech about switching. I did know. I'd been the one who discovered their migration plans while doing routine maintenance. It wasn't just Martinez either. Several of our biggest clients were quietly exploring cloud-based alternatives. Maybe I should have waited, I said, more to myself than Sam. Built more proof of concept. Or maybe, she lowered her voice, you should take your ideas somewhere else. Somewhere they'll be appreciated. The thought had crossed my mind. I'd even received a few recruiting emails from competing firms. But I believed in what I'd built, in what Vertex could become if only. My computer pinged with a calendar invite. Mandatory team meeting. 4 p.m. Strange. Michael never called late-day meetings unless. Layoffs, Sam whispered, seeing the notification. Third quarter numbers must be worse than we thought. She was right. At 4 p.m., we gathered in the main conference room. Michael stood at the front, flanked by HR representatives. His face had that fake sympathetic look executives practice for exactly these moments. As part of our ongoing optimization efforts, he began, we're making some strategic adjustments to our workforce. I tuned out the corporate buzzwords, already knowing where this was going. When they started calling names, mine was among the first. Please collect your personal belongings. HR will escort you out. As I packed my desk, I noticed Michael watching from his office. There was something in his expression, not quite triumph, but satisfaction. He found a way to get rid of the irritating developer with his disruptive ideas. What he didn't know was that I'd seen this coming. For weeks, I'd been carefully backing up my personal work, documenting my ideas, ensuring that everything I'd developed independently was secured. The prototype I'd built wasn't on Vertex's servers. It lived in my private cloud account, along with all my research and designs. Sam caught me at the elevator. "This is wrong," she said, hugging me quickly. "They're making a huge mistake." I smiled, feeling strangely calm. Maybe not. Maybe this is exactly what needs to happen. She slipped me her personal card. "Keep in touch. Something tells me you're not done disrupting things." In the parking garage, I sat in my car watching the rain fall on the windshield. 3 years of my life, dismissed with a form letter and an escort out. But as I thought about my prototype, about the future I could see so clearly while others remained blind, a plan began forming. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Walsh, my old roommate from NIT, who now worked at a venture capital firm. "Heard what happened. Remember that conversation we had about cloud enterprise software? Still interested? Call me." I smiled, thinking of the prototype waiting in my private repository. Michael had thrown my proposal in the trash, but he hadn't thrown away my dream. He just freed me to pursue it without constraints. That night, in my small apartment overlooking Lake Union, I opened my laptop and began writing a new proposal. Not for Vertex this time, but for myself. The first line read, "Cloud Core, the future of enterprise software." My phone kept buzzing with messages from coworkers, expressions of sympathy and support. But I barely noticed them. I was too busy laying the groundwork for what would become Michael Harrison's worst nightmare. "Focus on maintaining existing systems," he'd said. I planned to do much more than that. I planned to make those systems obsolete. Opening my development environment, I began coding with renewed purpose. Every line was a step away from Vertex, from Michael's short-sightedness, from the limitations others tried to place on innovation. By midnight, I had the outline of a business plan and the core architecture for what would become the most revolutionary enterprise software platform the industry had ever seen. Michael had thrown away my proposal thinking he was maintaining the status quo. Instead, he had just created his biggest competitor. And I was just getting started. 18 months after Michael Harrison threw my proposal in the trash, I stood in front of the Martinez Group's executive board, watching their faces as I demonstrated Cloud Core's capabilities. The same clients who had been quietly planning to leave Vertex were now openly amazed by what they saw. This migration would take hours, not months, their CTO asked, leaning forward in his chair. "Actually," I smiled, "it takes 47 minutes. We ran a test simulation with your exact database structure." The room erupted in murmurs. Behind me, the screen showed Cloud Core effortlessly handling processes that Vertex's legacy system struggled with for weeks. Every feature was a direct response to problems I'd watched clients battle for years. Problems Michael had insisted weren't worth solving. "And the cost savings?" their CFO asked. "Approximately 68% reduction in operational expenses," I replied, "with guaranteed uptime of 99.99%. More murmurs. These were numbers that seemed impossible, unless you understood exactly how outdated Vertex's architecture had become. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Marcus, wanting to know how the presentation was going. After that first text the night I was fired, He'd become more than just a venture capitalist. He was now CloudCore's lead investor and biggest cheerleader. That initial meeting with his firm had changed everything. "Let me get this straight," Marcus had said, staring at my prototype demo. "You built this while working at Vertex?" And Harrison threw it away, along with 3 years of my career, I'd confirmed. Marcus had laughed, but not like Michael had. This was the laugh of someone seeing an opportunity others had missed. "Their loss," he'd said, pulling out his phone. "Let me make some calls." Within a week, we'd secured $5 million in seed funding. Within a month, I'd hired my first team, including Sam Wright, who'd quit Vertex the moment she saw what we were building. "Their QA department is a joke anyway," she'd said, dropping her resignation letter on Michael's desk. "And Alex actually understands where technology is going." Now, watching the Martinez executives marvel at CloudCore, I thought about how different this was from my last presentation at Vertex. No dismissal, no condescension, just pure appreciation for innovation done right. "Mr. Foster," the CEO spoke up, "how soon can we begin implementation?" I tried not to smile too broadly. "We can start tomorrow. And please, call me Alex." Back at CloudCore's offices, a modern space in downtown Seattle with views that made Vertex's building look shabby, Sam was waiting with our team. "Well?" she asked, though my expression had already given it away. "Martinez Group is in," I confirmed. "Full platform migration, 3-year contract." The room erupted in cheers. On our wall of client logos, Martinez would be the biggest yet, and the 3rd major client we'd taken from Vertex. "Oh, and you're going to love this," Sam grinned, pulling up an email on her screen. "Guess who just posted a job listing for Cloud Integration Specialist on their website?" I leaned over to look. Sure enough, Vertex Solutions was finally, desperately trying to catch up to where I'd wanted to take them 2 years ago. "A bit late," I mused, "especially since we just hired the top 3 cloud architects in the region." My phone buzzed again, this time with an alert that made me pause. Vertex Solutions stock down 40% after Q3 earnings miss. "Should we send Michael a thank you note?" Sam joked, "for giving us the push we needed to build something better." I was about to respond when our office manager stuck her head in. "Alex, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from Vertex's board of directors." "Interesting." I nodded. "Send him in." William Chen, Vertex's lead director, looked distinctly uncomfortable in our modern office space. His suit seemed too formal, too much like the old world we'd left behind. "Mr. Foster," he began, remaining standing despite my gesture toward a chair. "I'll be direct. We've been watching CloudCore's growth with concern." "Concern?" I raised an eyebrow. "Or envy?" He cleared his throat. "Our board believes there might be opportunities for collaboration, perhaps even a merger." I let that hang in the air for a moment, enjoying the irony. "Does Michael know you're here?" "Mr. Harrison is not currently involved in these discussions." I pulled up our client dashboard on my screen, turning it so he could see. "We've taken 47% of Vertex's market share in 18 months. By this time next year, it'll be over 80%. Why would we want to merge?" "Resources," he said quickly. "Market presence. History." "History is exactly the problem," I interrupted. "Vertex is stuck in it. CloudCore is the future. And the future doesn't need to merge with the past. At least consider." "I did consider it," I cut him off. "About 2 years ago in Michael's office. He threw those considerations in the trash." Literally. William's face fell. He knew he was losing this battle. I'll tell you what, I continued, feeling generous. When Michael personally admits he was wrong, when he acknowledges that he dismissed innovation because he was too afraid of change, then we can talk about collaboration, but not merger. That ship has sailed. After he left, Sam poked her head in. Merger offer? First of many, I suspect. I nodded. They're finally realizing what they lost. What Michael lost, she corrected. By being too arrogant to listen. My phone buzzed with another message. Martinez Group's CEO. Contract signed. When can your team start? I smiled, thinking of Michael probably sitting in his office, watching his company's stock price fall, wondering how it had all gone wrong. Tell the team to prep for implementation, I told Sam, and maybe send a fruit basket to Michael, to thank him for throwing away the best idea he ever had. That evening, as I worked late in my office, a familiar name popped up in my email, Michael Harrison. Alex, we need to talk. What will it take to end this? I started typing, then deleted it. Then typed again. It was never about ending anything, Michael. It was about building something better. Something you were too afraid to even consider. But thanks for the motivation. Sometimes the best ideas come from the trash. I hit send, then turned back to my work. There was a platform to build, clients to help, and a future to create. Michael had taught me an invaluable lesson. Sometimes rejection is just innovation's way of finding a better path forward. And CloudCore was just getting started. 2 years to the day after Michael Harrison had thrown my proposal in his Trome wastebasket, I stood on stage at the World Technology Summit, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vertex had never even been invited to this prestigious event, and now here I was, representing the future of enterprise software. In the front row, I could see Marcus grinning like a proud parent. CloudCore had made his venture firm more money in 2 years than they'd seen in the previous decade. Behind him sat Sam and our core team, all wearing the same expression of quiet pride. But what caught my eye was the figure trying to be inconspicuous in the back row, Michael Harrison himself, looking considerably less polished than he had in his corner office days. His appearance wasn't just unexpected, it was a sign of how completely the tables had turned. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. 2 years ago, someone told me that cloud computing was just a trend, that enterprise clients would never abandon traditional software solutions. Today, I'm here to show you how wrong that assumption was. The screens behind me lit up with CloudCore's latest metrics. 84% of the enterprise software market, 99.99% uptime across all systems, average client cost savings of 71%, presence in 27 countries. Every number was a direct challenge to Vertex's old way of thinking. Innovation isn't just about building something new, I continued. It's about having the courage to challenge established wisdom, especially when, those in power tell you you're wrong. From the back of the room, I saw Michael shift uncomfortably in his seat. After the keynote, I was swarmed by reporters, investors, and potential clients. CloudCore wasn't just successful anymore. We were setting the standard for the entire industry. The same ideas Michael had dismissed as trendy buzzwords were now being taught in business schools as case studies in revolutionary innovation. Mr. Foster, a young reporter asked, is it true that CloudCore's architecture was originally proposed to Vertex Solutions? Before I could answer, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Yes, it was, and I threw it away. The crowd parted to reveal Michael Harrison, looking both defeated and determined. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Privately?" I nodded, leading him to a quiet corner of the conference center. Up close, I could see the toll the past 2 years had taken. Vertex's stock had plummeted 90%. Their clients had fled en masse, and their reputation for stability had been shattered. "I saw your numbers up there," he began. "They're impressive." "They're what I promised you 2 years ago," I replied. "Everything I showed you in that proposal has come true, exactly as predicted." He nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I'm here. The board, they're replacing me as CEO. Vertex is dying, Alex. We both know it. The market evolved," I said simply. "You chose not to." "I chose wrong," he admitted, and for the first time, I heard genuine regret in his voice. "I was so convinced I knew what our clients needed that I couldn't see the future when it was right in front of me, when you were right in front of me." I let that sink in for a moment. This was the admission I'd once thought I wanted to hear. But now, standing in the aftermath of CloudCore's success, it felt almost unnecessary. "What do you want, Michael?" He pulled out a folder, an actual paper folder, so characteristically old school. "One last proposal. Not a merger, not a takeover. A chance to save what's left of Vertex by letting us become a CloudCore implementation partner. Let us help other companies migrate from legacy systems to your platform." The irony was almost too perfect. You want to help companies move away from the very systems you insisted they'd never abandon? "I deserve that," he nodded. "But think about it. Who knows the pain points of legacy systems better than we do? Who understands what's holding companies back?" I studied him for a moment. The old Michael would have come in with demands, with corporate swagger. This Michael was different, humbled, but perhaps finally ready to learn. "Give me one reason," I said. "One reason that isn't about saving Vertex." He thought for a moment. "Because I was wrong. Not just about the technology, but about you, about innovation, about everything. And maybe helping other companies avoid my mistakes is the best way to make that right." I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Sam. "Remember that implementation partner program we discussed? Time to launch it. I'll have our team review the proposal," I told Michael. "But understand something. If we do this, it's not about Vertex. It's about the clients who need to move forward." He nodded quickly. "Of course. Thank you, Alex, for even considering." "Don't thank me yet," I interrupted. "You'll be starting from scratch. No special treatment, no guaranteed contracts. You'll have to earn every client's trust, just like we did." As he walked away, Sam appeared at my elbow. "Are you seriously considering this?" "Why not?" I smiled. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your competition, it's making them work for you." The next month was a blur of activity. CloudCore's partner program launched with Vertex as its first participant, though few realized the significance of that partnership. Michael stepped down as CEO, taking a much lower position leading Vertex's new cloud transition team. The tech press had a field day with the story. Former giant becomes implementation partner for innovative startup. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments of transformation. One evening, I found Michael working late in our office, poring over CloudCore's documentation. "Your architecture," he said, looking up as I passed. "It's brilliant. I should have seen it back then." "But you didn't," I replied. "And that's why we're here now." He nodded slowly. "You know what the worst part was? Watching you succeed, knowing I could have been part of it. knowing I could have helped build this instead of fighting it. Everything happens for a reason, I said. Cloud Core needed to be built outside Vertex's constraints. We needed to be free to innovate without compromise. 6 months later, I stood in my office at Cloud Core's new headquarters, looking out over Seattle's skyline. On my desk sat an article from Tech Quarterly. Cloud Core revolutionizes enterprise software. How a rejected proposal changed an industry. My phone buzzed. A message from Sam. You need to see this. Vertex just completed their 100th successful migration to Cloud Core. They're actually getting good at this. I smiled, thinking of that Trom wastebasket in Michael's old office. Sometimes the best ideas rise from the trash, finding their way to success through unexpected paths. Another message popped up, this time from Michael. Just heard from the Martinez Group. They're recommending us to their partners for Cloud Core migration. Never thought I'd be grateful for being proven wrong. I typed back. Innovation is about being willing to change. Better late than never. Looking at Cloud Core's current metrics displayed on my wall screen, I felt a sense of completion. We hadn't just built a successful company. We had transformed an industry. Every client migrated, every system modernized, every partner brought on board was proof that innovation couldn't be stopped, only temporarily delayed. The final vindication hadn't come from proving Michael wrong. It had come from proving that good ideas find their way to success, even if they have to take the long way around. As I prepared to leave for the day, I passed our company motto, now emblazoned on the wall in our lobby. Innovation doesn't ask permission. It simply shows the way forward. Below it, in smaller text, was the date Michael had thrown away my proposal, a reminder not of failure, but of the moment everything began to change. Success, I had learned, wasn't about revenge. It was about having the courage to build something better, even when others couldn't see it. And sometimes the people who try to stop you end up working to help your vision succeed. That, more than any market share or stock price, was the real victory.